Again, I want to say how good it is to be with you. You'll have to excuse my voice. I've had a second bout of COVID. Diane and I have. We're over the COVID, but you can still see the residual effects of my voice. So I apologize for that. Tonight, I'm thinking about a verse in Romans that deals with hope. May the God of hope give you the joy and peace in believing, so that you may abound in hope in the power of the Holy Spirit. This past summer, several well-known singers passed away. Obviously, I can't see you, but I have a feeling that if I ask you to raise your hands, most of you would say Jimmy Buffett. Jimmy was mellow, the Parrot Heads, the Margaritaville. And if you have trouble with margarita, just think of margarita without any alcohol in it. But there was another singer who died this summer. Her name was Tina Turner. I remember, I'm not a great fan of Tina Turner's, but I recall a song that she sang that did mean a great deal to me. The song is simply, "What's Love Got to Do with It?" High energy. We know that she married the man who really discovered her, Ike and Tina Turner. Later, we found out that Ike was abusing Tina, and so they got a divorce. I don't know exactly when this song was written in terms of their relationship. It sounds to me as if it were written after they had decided to terminate the marriage. What's love got to do with it? And then that line that has always captured my imagination. Love is just a secondhand emotion. Now, for those of you who are pastors, I don't recommend that you use this in your wedding ceremonies. Probably 1 Corinthians 13, the love chapter, while Paul never intended for it to be in a wedding ceremony, so many qualities that are mentioned there that we need in that intimate relationship of marriage. But Tina Turner writes, "What's love got to do with it?" I hope you'll allow me to bend the title of that song just a little bit and talk about what's hope got to do with it. Hope is that ability to live in the present with a sense that not only is God with us in the now, but God will be with us in the then. We live into the not yet, into the future. And we live with a sense that whatever is going to happen, God has us in God's hands. Paul was writing to the Romans, and he said to them, I want you to know that your power can abound, the hope can abound in the power of the Holy Spirit. How interesting that Paul wrote this to what we think were probably several house churches in Rome. Rome was the center of power. It was the center of earthly power. Soldiers marching into the city after a conquest, the general on a big stallion walking in the city. Rome was a place where power, earthly speaking, was really located. What about these house churches that were meeting in Rome? Just a few people gathered in a home to worship Jesus Christ as their Lord. In fact, if you and I were to sum up the whole letter of Romans, which is difficult because it's a very powerful letter, but if we were to sum up the letter, we would say that the message of Paul is that Jesus Christ is supreme. That message to a few people meeting in home churches against the backdrop of this city that was the center of military and political power. What in the world is Paul saying? Paul really is contradicting the way that you and I usually look at power. There's some people who are just grabbing for power. There are people that we know who just want more and more control over things. Sometimes this is a problem in the church because somebody can want control and want power and create all kinds of problems. Paul wasn't talking about, obviously, that kind of power. Parker Palmer, the Quaker writer, has a wonderful phrase in which he talks about downward mobility. Most of us think we want to be upwardly mobile. Parker Palmer says that what we need to strive for is the humility that comes when you and I are willing to be downwardly mobile. What Parker Palmer means by that is that the more that we realize who we are, and the more that we realize that we don't have control over everything, and the more that we understand that we are not the ones who have the power, the more that we acquire that humility that reaches out to God, and a church in Rome with just a few people could say to all of those soldiers marching in the street, you don't understand. We have the power that abounds in us through the Holy Spirit of God. But in order for that to happen, you and I have to come to the place in our lives where we understand we can't do life by ourselves. We can't make it by ourselves. We have to come to that place where we understand that what real power is not a soldier waving a sword or a spear. But incredibly, it's this little group of people gathered in a house church who are proclaiming the message of the letter to the Romans, that in this world and in the world to come, how grateful we are that we are in the hands of God. I was reading recently something written by Walter Brueggemann, that Old Testament scholar who's now retired but continues to write so many wonderful things. Walter Brueggemann said something that was fascinating to me. We are coming to grips, he said, with the fact that the world for which we have been prepared is a world that is coming apart, and it is coming apart by the grace of God. Coming apart by the grace of God. What an interesting thing to say. Except maybe Brueggemann, in his own way, was saying exactly what Paul was saying to these little house churches in Rome. And that is, if you and I really want to have the power that lasts, the power that abounds, it is the power found in Jesus Christ. And if we're just erecting our own lives, that's not what life is. And by the grace of God, maybe one day we find out that real power is in Jesus Christ. What's hope got to do with it? It has everything to do with it. Because when you and I live into and out of the power of the God who loves us in Jesus Christ, that is what makes all the difference.